All right, here's a Math 3 review. So dealing with the statistics, okay? So we've got our z-score formula. Remember that can be x bar as well as mu. Okay, so let's start off. So the mean ACT math score in our classes is 18 points with a standard deviation of 3 points. Okay, and these scores are normally distributed. So first thing we want to do is show the scores for all three standard deviations above and below the mean, and we'll draw those on the bell curve. So we start with our mean in the middle. Okay, so 17 right there. And then as we go to the right, remember we add the standard deviations. So standard deviation of 3 would give us 20, then 23, 2 standard deviations away, and then 26 for 3 standard deviations away. And if we're going to the left, to the negative, we subtract the standard deviation each time. So we'd have 14, 11, and 8. Okay? And that's what the bell curve would look like for our class, okay, if this were the case. So number 2, what percent of scores are within 2 standard deviation of the mean? So remember, 2 standard deviations to 2 standard deviations, that's 95% of our population, of our scores. Okay, if we were to go 1 standard deviation to 1, that's 68%, and then 3 standard deviations to 3 is 99.7%. Okay, so number 2 would be 95%. Number 3, 68% of students scored between what scores? So that's 1 standard deviation away, so it would be between 14 and 20. Okay, would make up 68% of the students. Now, number 4 says Mr. Rideout scored a 16 on this math section. Compared with our class, what is his z-score? Okay, so 16 would be somewhere around here, or actually probably closer there, right? But that z-score will tell us exactly. So we take his score, and this is where we use our formula here. So the z-score would equal our score minus the mean, which is 17, divided by the standard deviation, which is 3. So 16 minus 17 would give us -1, divided by 3 would be -0.33, because we round to the nearest hundredth. So z-score, -0.33. Okay, then what is his percentile? So we're going to use that now to find the percentile. So when we use the z-score table, okay, we've got the positives, we've also got the negative, okay, and we need to round to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so -0.33 was our score, so we go to the negative side. Remember, we split it up, so I have the first to the 10th, so -0.3, and that tells me vertically where we align. And then we have 0.03, because that's our hundredth, and that's the horizontal alignment. So 0.03 is right here, so we're going down here till we get to -0.3, which is right here. So then our percentile would be 0.3707, which we round to 37%. Okay, so that z-score gave us a 0.3707, which we made a percent, and that's 37%. Okay, so what percent of students scored the same or less than Mr. Rideout? Well, remember, if we're thinking here, okay, so at 16 would be somewhere around here-ish. Okay, so below that, at or below, that's the 37%. Okay, so 37% scored at or below. Now, what percent of students scored more than Mr. Rideout? So the whole thing would make up 100%. So if I go 100 minus 37, okay, that would give us 3, and that would be 9. So 63 would have scored above that score. So 63 would have been this direction, okay, which makes sense because the mean cuts it in half. All right, so there's the first part. Okay, now let's take a look at surveys, experiments, or observational studies. So you need to remember the differences between those. Okay. A researcher wants to know if a new soil additive helps plants grow more quickly. He grows 20 specimens in soil treated with the additive and 20 in the soil that has not been treated. Okay, we've got two groups. Generally, if you're trying to prove something like this, that should tell us this is going to be an experiment. Okay, and he's got two groups, a control group and a regular group, so an experiment. Number 9, to find out whether car accidents are more likely on rainy days, a researcher records weather conditions for 50 randomly selected accidents over the past year. Okay, so he's not running an experiment. He's not making rain and then checking to see if cars get in accidents. He's also not asking people what the weather was like when they got in accidents. So he's observing or looking at the data that observed what the weather was like. So that would be an observational study. 10. A donut shop wants to know whether their customers prefer maple or chocolate donuts. They randomly select 50 customers and ask them which type of donut they prefer. Should be able to tell pretty quickly. They're asking questions. It's a survey. So 11. Mr. Rydalch is disappointed with the lack of attention his juniors are giving him as he teaches. He goes to Hogle Zoo and buys a set of monkeys. Then he trains these monkeys to record how many times certain people are on their phones or devices or reading books. For the next 5 weeks, they record the results of watching the students. Okay, so again, they're watching, observing, so it's an observational study. And I'll abbreviate that. Okay, number 12. An employee of Macy's decides to gather data about shoppers. As he bags their food, he decides to ask them some questions about their personal lives. He records the data after having helped them out to their vehicles. Okay, so asking questions, seeing what people are doing. Again, survey, because they have to respond. 13. Mr. Rydalch feels that his fourth period is very sad, and it may be due to the way he reports their scores as he returns homework and tests. He splits the class into 3 groups. Mr. Rydalch then stamps smiley faces on one group's return papers, frowning faces on another group, and then keeps the third group the same as before. I probably should have put another comma there. Okay, so again, we're testing something. We control some of these things, and so that would be an experiment. Okay, and the last one with this group, when you graduate, they have you answer questions about your experiences at school. So again, questions, definitely a survey. All right, now on the next, okay, and this kind of split weird over the paper. It says, name what the population is, the parameter of interest, the type of study, and the method for sampling the group. Okay, so remember, the parameter of interest is what you're trying to answer. Okay, the population is the whole group you want to apply it to. The sample is just the group you deal with. You test or select, the one that gives you the data. And it's a smaller subset of the population. Okay, then we have to remember the other types of sampling that we have. Okay, so that was the third thing, or the fourth thing. So remember, we have the simple random, where you just randomly select people. You have the systematic, where random, where you're like every third person, every fifth house, or something like that. There's a system that helps you choose the random people. Then there's a cluster sample, where you take different groups and hoping that each separate group represents the population of a whole, and then choose a few different groups. So kind of like at school, you would pick classes that have freshmen, sophomores, junior, and seniors, and then decide on a certain amount of those classes to use. You have the stratified. This is where you take from each group that you want, and you pick a certain amount from each group. Okay. There's the convenient sample. So this is when people, basically whatever easiest for you. You sample the people that come to your class, or you sample the people that you know. Okay. Then a volunteer, where you ask who wants to be involved, and they have to choose to be involved. Okay. So let's take a look. So this first one, The owner of a donut shop collects data about the types of donuts that are purchased so she can make donuts accordingly. She records the type of donut purchased by every other person each day for 3 weeks. Okay, so the population does she care what everybody wants? No. She just cares about what type of people, what they want to eat. So the population would be her customers. Okay. The sample, because I apparently didn't put it, I have sampling. Okay. So the type of study here we're doing is an observational. Okay. The parameter of interest is the kind of donuts. Okay. That people want. The sampling would be systematic because it's every other person each day for 3 weeks. So every other person, so it'd be systematic, and that every other person would be the sample. Okay, and I didn't put that on, but you should be getting the sample for everybody. Okay, so the sample was just the people she asked, the asked customers. All right, 16. Market researchers want to know if people like the new fried pancakes restaurant at the local mall. The food is anything you want deep fried inside a pancake. They ask everyone who buys from the restaurant if they like it or not. Okay. Population, would be basically everyone, right? They want to know what everyone thinks, whether they come to the mall or not. The sample are their customers. Okay, the people that actually come. So it's people that are coming, so it would be a convenience sampling method, okay, and it's a survey. Okay, and not ask customers, I guess, up here, sorry. It was just the customers that she looked at. Parameter of interest is, if they like it. If people like it. All right, 17. Mr. Radalch needs to find out why his students are slacking on their homework. He thinks it is due to the fact that they cannot see his beautiful smile when they work at home. He chooses certain students to have a picture of his face on their homework. The rest of the students have their homework just like normal. To decide whom to choose for the picture, Mr. Radalch groups students into 5 groups according to their typical grade in his class, and then randomly chooses 4 people from each of those 5 groups. So, population would be the students. The sample would be those students that were chosen, okay, the 4 of each group. Okay, the parameter of interest is, I want to find out if they need to see me to do homework. The type of study is an experiment because I have a control group, multiple groups. Okay, and the sampling type, so I split up each group first, and then from each group chose some people. That one is what we call the stratified. So that'd be a stratified sampling. All right, number 18. The owner of a taco shop collects data about the types of tacos that are purchased so she knows what types of tacos sell best. She asks customers to take an online survey on the SurveyMonkey website. Okay, so her population is her customers. The sample would be those that choose to take the survey. Okay, obviously the study is a survey, and she asks them to take the survey, so it's not a convenience, it's a volunteer, is what I meant to say. They have to volunteer to take the survey. And her parameter of interest is types of tacos. What kind they like, what kind sells best. Okay, number 19. The school principal wants to see the percentage of students who are enrolled in AP courses. He decides to look at the English classes and pick a few students from each class. They will then look up the schedules of those students to see. Okay, so he's looking at the English classes. So the population would be students. Okay, parameter of interest, are they enrolled in AP courses? Okay, the study would basically be observational because they're observing what classes they take. The sample would be the group that they choose out of the English classes. Okay, The sampling, okay, it looks like it could be either stratified or cluster. I would go with cluster because they're looking at those English classes and then just picking a few from them. Not looking at the different type of students and picking from there, but just the English classes. Okay, number 20. The NSA is looking to see what happens when a teen's social media access is disrupted. Does it change their behavior? So they sort through the social security numbers and pick a few hundred teens to test. On half, they disrupt their social media, and the other half they don't. Okay, so would be an experiment because they're affecting them. You know, parameter is a disruption. Does it change their behavior? Okay, the sampling method here is just a simple random. Okay, there's no methodology to it, so they're just going to randomly do that. The population would be teens, and the sample would be the teens the teens in the experiment. All right, well, that's pretty much it, guys. So we'll have the z-score tables there in class, so we'll be able to use those, and that's pretty much it. So there we go.